Great. Well, it seems like we've had a lot of people join, so I think we can go ahead and get started here. So first, thank you so much for joining the webinar today to talk about how to achieve return on ad spend in the absence of third-party cookies. So in this webinar, we have representatives from Google, OtterBox, and Delve who will be offering best practices aimed at marketing professionals who plan to execute digital advertising strategies, and those who are just generally concerned about the impact of third-party cookies and IDFA deprecation on advertising RoAS. Obviously, this is a topic that has been very hot on everyone's radar, and they're all very curious about knowing that it's going to really impact all of our businesses and how we do our jobs. So before we really jump into it, I'd like to introduce our panelists. So Betsy, I'll turn it over to you to start. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do at Delve, and a little bit of quick background on Delve in general.
Sure. So I'm Betsy Sellers. I'm the head of media here at Delve. I oversee our programmatic, SEM, and paid social teams. Been doing this for about 15 years, so I've seen a lot of changes in our rapidly evolving industry in that time, having worked both client side and agency side. What I really like about Delve is our focus on measurement first advertising, and we actually got our start within analytics first and then expanded into media from there. So analytics is really at the heart of everything that we do here.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Betsy. Bill, I'll turn it over to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself. How long have you been at Otter Products, and what's your role there?
Sure. I'm Bill Linhart. I've been at Otter Products for about 2.5 years. Prior to Otter, I had spent some time at Microsoft and Facebook and ad tech. Here at OtterBox, program manager for marketing analytics and technology. So really my focus is on maturing our marketing approach through data and enabling that data to reach all the teams across the company.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bill. And finally, Jeremy, I'll turn it over to you. If you want to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your role at Google and just general industry background.
Yeah, great. Hi, everybody. Jeremy Woodley. I'm a director in the Americas Platforms team within Google. That's the former DoubleClick business. I manage all our non-traditional partners, our non-holding company partners, which include indie agencies, system integrators, and channel resale partners like the current company like Delve. You know, my role lately, a lot of it's been an evangelist and somebody to speak and market about, you know, these changes and how that impacts marketers' ability to continue to use our tool sets and buy, you know, advertising through Google with our partners, which is a real joy because I have the privilege of working with really advanced partners like Delve that understand how to do this and are really taking it to the next level and preparing for the future.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeremy. Then I'll quickly introduce myself. My name's Emma Marcotte, and I lead the Delve engagement consulting practice. So this practice within Delve really functions as the primary point of contact for our clients in a strategic client success manner, as well as focusing on new business, making sure that we're setting up our new clients for success across the board. We really function as the glue, and in my role, you know, I'm getting questions often from clients to understand how is this going to impact my business and where am I going to go from here. So definitely excited to jump into the topic with you guys today. So before we dive in, I think it would be very fair to say we're all still a little bit in the dark about what this third-party cookie deprecation means for advertising and really programmatic advertising specifically, knowing that leaning into those third-party cookies from a targeting perspective is a core component of how many of us run our programmatic strategies today. So just to re-ground ourselves before we really dive in, let's restate the facts that are in front of all of us. So privacy concerns really drove Apple to remove IDFAs, and now Google is taking a step forward to remove third-party cookies. So third-party cookie deprecation means that this will remove third-party audiences from a targeting perspective. As we know, third-party audiences are a really critical initiative within tactics such as prospecting and retargeting within the programmatic space. And the programmatic advertising space is a $94 billion market in the US alone, or that's what it's expected to be in 2022. So this has a really big impact on everyone here today. So when third-party cookies disappear, some of the third-party audiences will just inherently be less effective, and therefore that could create concerns that in this becoming less effective, that some of the programmatic advertising budgets will yield a lower RoAS. And this is exactly what we're trying to address today. So as an industry, how do we maintain performance? How do we maintain RoAS in programmatic advertising, given that these third-party audiences are soon going to be less effective than they are right now? And how do we navigate this future state? So thank you again, everyone. Really excited to be here, really excited to dive into this topic, especially since we have representatives from all three sides. So a lot of different perspectives in the room today. We have the service side being Betsy, client side Bill, and then finally the platform side with Jeremy. So let's provide a little bit of context on our first topic. So Jeremy, I'll turn it over to you first. So why did Google join forces with Apple on the issue of consumer privacy?
Yeah, it's a good foundational topic. The announcement that we had back in March was the Google Ads business deciding that we needed to take a position around consumer privacy, digital identity going forward. It is not a Google Chrome announcement. Chrome operates independently from us and makes their own decisions. But I think what it reflects, both sides of the company reflects, is a belief that we have that there's a fundamental change in consumer sentiment around digital identity and consent around usage of that data. That has changed in the last few years. That manifests in many different ways. You see, regulations emerging in different countries and different states in the United States, like GDPR, CCPA, and you see companies reacting to that as well, and understanding consumers want more control over their digital identity, more ability to disappear or control the ways the data is being used. And Apple certainly has taken a leadership position around this, so with their different approaches to identity. Chrome made the same decision. They're saying that consumers want more control and such. So I think the ads business, obviously we rely on this digital identity deeply to be able to target and measure the advertising we have, both on our own media and then on third-party media. But we also, have to understand the consumer sentiment of change. They want more control. So, our decision in March, that announcement was about setting a standard that we think is beyond where the current lines are in terms of laws and regulations. That consumers are going to want additional controls and additional restrictions on digital identity that will over time mean that our current architecture for managing digital identity is going to have to change. And we're going to have to move away from what we called a precision era to more of a predictive area, away from deterministic to probabilistic approaches. And we took a hard look at that, and we decided we could do that, that we can move away from the level of resolution we have around digital identity and use modeling techniques that are currently in place within our products or could easily be developed and displayed and deployed within the ecosystem to be able to do the major use cases and maintain the return on ad spend that we've seen in the past, but do it with taking consideration consumer sentiment and really respecting their desires. That's easy to say, but it's difficult to implement. So we started down this road now. Particularly leaning onto partners like Delve to be able to take advertisers through that journey, because it does require experimentation. It does take changes to tactics and approaches, and it opens up doors to different ways of having relationships with consumers that are important. So it does require us to change. But I think, again, going back to the original point, this is about, we're not making decisions. We're reacting to how consumers are changing their minds about the topic, and we think that's so fundamental and important that we want to, we made a big push, and we're going to take a leadership position on this topic. So that's sort of the general position. Everything falls from that kind of that positioning and that stance. And again, we're here to work with the entire ecosystem, advertisers and partners, agencies, to figure out how to make this transition. We have total confidence it can be done. I think it's just a matter of the commitment and taking the steps through that. And I do think we'll end up in a better place in terms of how we do digital advertising fundamentally.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Bill, let me turn it over to you here. So what was your team's first reaction when you saw the Google announcement?
In all honesty, the marketer in me was completely disappointed, right? So, and for selfish reasons. Here at Otter Products, we're at an inflection point with our technology. We're bringing our ad tech stack in-house. We're adopting some of the Google marketing platforms. We have made huge strides with our finance department in measurement and building trust across the entire company that as marketers, we are doing what's right for the company, and we're good stewards of the company's dollar. And my initial reaction was, oh no, this is all going to go away, right? Like everything that we just built over the last 2 years, or we're working on today. After taking a step back and realizing that, particularly if Google is on board with this, I have very strong faith that Google will protect its own business and do what's right for the ecosystem as a whole, just like Jeremy said. So I'm not worried moving forward. It's just a lot more education that needs to happen internally, particularly with our finance teams, and building that company trust back again. Not that we've lost it, but just it's going to be a little bit more difficult. From a consumer lens, I'm 100% excited about this, right? So I also, as probably everybody here does, gets tired of the Criteo ads and being hounded by those, and maybe that will level out a little bit, maybe not. But for our consumers, we want that protection. We want to work with partners and work with platforms that enable us to follow the government rules across the world, right? So I'm excited about that portion of it. I think it's clearly the direction of the future, and we just need to sort of take a half step back, reset, and go forward. And as Jeremy said, it's going to be a lot less about individuals and what their consumer journey was, and more about modeling and how we play within that space. So I feel for us at Otter, like we're in a good spot moving forward. We have some decent first-party data that we're trying to pull together and utilize. So overall, happy to see Google make this move outside of my day-to-day job.
Absolutely, that makes a lot of sense. And then Betsy, would love to get your reaction. What reactions have you seen from Delve's clients? What was your personal reaction to this announcement?
Sure, I think Bill recapped it really well. There was definitely some initial panic. I would say a lot of confusion just around timing and what are the implications. And, it's not just the Google announcement, it's everything else that's out there in the market with IDFA and app tracking transparency, et cetera. So definitely confusion. It's also seen a little bit of, I don't know if it's quite denial, but like a lack of urgency around, well, that's coming. We'll deal with it when it gets here. But I think the recent iOS updates impacting Facebook campaigns has actually been kind of an eye-opener for several of our clients. We've seen metrics take a hit in the UI just because of that, and it's not because the conversions aren't happening, it's because they're not being reported out on. So I think that was a really eye-opening thing that, hey, this can literally impact my performance metrics overnight. We've also just seen an interest in partnering with Delve to really proactively prepare. So one of the things that we've been talking to a lot of clients about is Amazon intent data. We'll dive into that a little bit more later. But the general mentality, I would echo Bill and Jeremy that we're all in this together. We're all coming at it from different angles, but we really need to figure it out together as clients and service side and partners too.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And I think that obviously we're on the same team here, but from our clients, there's been a stark shift in how they're approaching these conversations with some of the more recent changes. When the announcement first came out, I think everyone was just a little bit confused. And to your point, Betsy, it did create a little lack of urgency, but as clients have tangibly seen that change, it's really sparked a fire to set themselves up for success, which is what we want them to do in partnership with our tech partners to make sure that we're really ready when this happens.
I think one thing, Emma, is a lot of what we're talking about is what I call positive story, what we're losing. I think there is a positive story around this, particularly around first-party data and around first-party connection. Like it's in this new world, it's gold, right? The more that you can have a direct connection to a consumer, a direct relationship with them, and understand how they're reacting to different marketing and advertising messages and how that is driving outcomes you as a brand care about, the better. And I think that's a real positive message. We've also seen emerge from the pandemic, the explosion of digital touch points and the opportunity to change how you talk to consumers and deliver value to them. That's the positive side of this, because that is like the foundation of both the activation and the measurement you need. And I think for most brands, it's the way you want to go. It's just a real positive direction. It's easier for others than others, but that's an example of what I call a positive change. That, and then also, again, really respecting your consumers' intent and desire about their data and about their privacy. But anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. It's definitely about a balance here with these changes. So as I mentioned in the opening, tech platforms are really leaning on third-party cookies to pre-package those third-party audiences to use for programmatic advertisers. To make this a little bit more real for our audience, and given that Bill from Otter Products is here with us today, I wanted to give an example of what we're really referring to with this. So if I'm going to buy a new iPhone off Best Buy's website, a tech vendor such as Blue Kai could pixel me, and then Blue Kai would put me into a third-party audience segment called iPhone 12 owners. Now Blue Kai can send that data to a DSP such as DV360, and finally Bill's team at Otter Products could then serve programmatic ads for life-proof cases to that third-party audience, since they know that they have an iPhone 12. This could be part of their prospecting efforts or their retargeting efforts. And with all of that, third-party audience targeting and programmatic will be adversely impacted by these third-party cookies going away, just given that clear example right there. So this is why brands who rely very heavily on programmatic advertising really need to pay attention to the third-party cookie changes and IDFA deprecation. As you know, just using a very simple example right there, we're all really going to be impacted in that, in terms of that deterministic targeting. And to Jeremy's point earlier, we need to get comfortable and excel in leaning into that probabilistic approach. So let me turn to the panelists. So Bill, in the use case, obviously picked this because you're with us today, so it's very relevant, but does this use case resonate with you and your team? Do you care that sometime in 2022 that the level of third-party audience targeting will be no longer possible, and how do you see this impacting your team or your efforts really?
Yeah, absolutely care about third-party cookies going away. Really what it's forcing us to do is push ourselves across this maturity curve a lot faster. With that comes its own problems and priorities and company initiatives and things like that. But we've historically been pretty reliant on third-party data within platforms in and of itself. So I briefly mentioned the trust between marketing and finance and what we've done there and showing return. Again, my main concern at this point in time is, hey, great, look at our efforts from 2020 and our efforts in 2021. And then when February of 22 comes around and everything tanks, doesn't tank, it lowers, or it becomes less attractive. We have a lot of explaining to do, and obviously we can prep the company with that in advance, and we've been doing education sessions across it. But really, we've got to reevaluate the platforms that we use, and what we absolutely need moving forward is the ability to hook our first-party data into the platforms. So at the end of the day, whoever makes that the easiest for people like us is probably going to get our business initially with that. So third-party cookies, very much a concern for us. We're prepping with it, and we have to push ourselves to move faster across it. So I mentioned data also. So for us, we have 3 or 4 different initiatives across the company on pulling data together in a privacy-safe way that we can utilize for marketing. So it's a heavy lift for a company like us to do that, but it's also a necessary lift. This is something that we've been wanting to do for the last 5 years, is pull warranty data with marketing data, with sell-through data from our .coms, plus any in-store or channel partner information we can get, right? So looking at the positives for Jeremy here, we're really able to push the company in a direction that we needed to go anyway to kind of justify our spend, become more efficient. I think at the end of the day, RoAS is important, but I think our efficiency of our spend is as equally important to us, right? So are we getting more bang for our buck? You never know when budgets are going to tighten or loosen. So we need to be as efficient as possible. So those are my concerns around it.
Yeah, absolutely. That all makes sense. Wanted to highlight a couple other use cases that the third-party cookie removal will impact for brands like Otter Products. So we're leaning into prospecting in the example I provided before, but retargeting on mobile and desktop will be impacted as well. Partners that are really heavily reliant on third-party cookies, such as Criteo, should definitely be worried about this because it's kind of the foundation and the base of everything that they're doing. So when those go away, you know, the foundation crumbles a bit, right? And then another big one that we've been talking about is frequency controls, also on mobile and desktop. This will definitely be impacted. Marketers will be constrained in their ability to manage frequency controls and programmatic advertising, understanding that those frequency controls are really dependent on cookies and understanding how many times you've hit a specific consumer. So those are just 2 additional sample use cases that illustrate why marketers really need to care about the third-party cookie and IDFA deprecation, since all these techniques that we're all leaning into really heavily right now will be impacted. And then to Bill's point, we expect RoAS to be impacted as well. So we've talked a lot about what are some of the negatives that are coming from this, but let's really flip the script and focus on the glass being half full. So another question for our panelists. So if third-party data cookies are going away and brands may and likely will see diminishing returns with their third-party targeting strategies and programmatic, what data would we advise them to look for? How can we try and maintain RoAS in this world? So Betsy, let me turn this to you. What's your reaction to this and what's your advice?
Sure. So, you know, obviously Jeremy spoke a little bit about the probabilistic side as well, which will be very important, but there will still be deterministic data available. And so it's important to look for that data that is deterministic and has really strong and well-defined intent signals. So one example of that would be within Amazon DSP, which this offers a pretty compelling data set that allows advertisers to leverage intent data such as product searches, product views, product purchases. And what's interesting is you can use it not just from an inclusion standpoint, but also from an exclusion standpoint. So a couple practical examples there. Outer products could actually include users who are in market for a new phone, as demonstrated by their product view or search behavior within Amazon, but also exclude users who recently purchased a case from some of their major competitors. So just kind of a practical use case there, highlighting that.
Awesome, that's really helpful. And then I guess, is Amazon the only example of how brands can lean into intent data, or are other partners doing this as well?
Yeah, definitely not. Google Shopping are great sources of intent data that can be leveraged for audience targeting via DV360. So practical example here, again, for Otter products would be maybe within some of the lower funnel advertising efforts. Otter could target users searching for iPhone cases on Google Shopping, you know, pick that up and target via DV360. Or for more mid-funnel efforts, might want to target someone who has recently searched for how to transfer contacts to a new phone, or best Android phone reviews, that kind of stuff.
Really quick to chime in on that side, Emma. Absolutely right, and these are tactics that we do use, by the way. But the other piece of missing information here that we've just begun to use, that we commissioned a consumer journey study, which helps us essentially reinforce our thoughts and our gut feelings around the intent data, right? So we know that user sees an ad, display ad, they do a search on Google, they come to otterbox.com, they bounce out, they see another ad, and then they end up at Amazon or some other third-party marketplace or going into a store. So we're really trying to utilize that consumer journey information that we have, plus the intent within platforms to be a lot more effective at the end of the day.
Awesome, that's great. Thank you for sharing that, Bill. And I guess, Jeremy, let me turn it over to you. So coming from the Google perspective, how do you see brands leaning into Google's intent data for their advertising?
Well, yeah, I think increasingly, you know, having a backbone of first-party data will be really critical. You know, we're going to be talking a lot about a feature of our platform called Customer Match, the ability to import, you know, email addresses, particularly to be able to match to our identity and then be able to use that to extend to similar audiences to broaden your reach. So that's within the Google universe, right? That's a good practical use case. And we're going to be really leaning into more tools to be able to take data, first-party data, consented data from consumers, and be able to use that to create the right messaging and marketing to them at different moments. So and it's very, like, it's a fairly new feature in some respects, and it'll be developed and made better over time and such. I think The other thing to think about is, in terms of out there experimentation coming, the privacy sandbox within Chrome, the different proposals out there would recreate audience-based targeting that we see through, audience lists today, like you mentioned earlier in that example around, iPhone 12 users, and the ability to replicate remarketing. Retargeting also using that. Those are in experimentation. They're still being developed and finalized. We will integrate those into our products to enable that functionality in the future, so the platform will support that. And our commitment as a platform company is to mask some of that complexity, so that an advertiser doesn't have to understand the sandbox necessarily, just to understand that we can replicate that audience-based targeting and options we had in the old, cookie-based world in a world without cookies, and work across different environments, whether that's Safari or, Chrome or, an app environment. And in general, like, one thing to think about is, like, there is actually a fair amount of modeling already built into things like frequency and reach management today, because of the lack of data that we have already. The deprecation of mobile identifiers, particularly within the Apple environment. I think the numbers we're seeing, 60–70% of current programmatic addressable media just doesn't have an identifier. I mean, has identifiers, at least 30 or 40 that doesn't. And, we see models going down to 10–15% when cookies really do get deprecated, in 2022. So, you're going to have a strategy there. But know that you already have the tools like ours are already thinking about that. So we're already modeling frequency and reach management in the current tool, because we don't have 100% identity to be able to do that. And we've been having to do that for quite a few years. So there's a lot of this is more in progress than the average user.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really helpful context. Thank you, Jeremy. Perfect. So let's center the conversation now around first-party data. So today we've really been talking about the changes in third-party data and what that means for ourselves as advertisers. But let's lean into first-party data now to understand how can we best use that to support this change. So in the spirit of keeping this actionable, I'll give another example similar to the way I did at the beginning. So if I search for iPhone cases on Google, I'm actually leaving my personal intent data with Google. So that's why the large tech partners such as the Google, Amazon, Facebook are so formidable, because they have access to this really powerful intent user data left by consumers. So this is really foundational to our conversation. Similarly to Google, Amazon, and Facebook, brands can also do that. Brands can also generate their own first-party intent data and then use it for really powerful and actionable advertising. So let's talk about the brand's first-party data here a little bit. So there's a number of different types of it. If we start at the top of the consumer journey, the focus on data that consumers leave behind when they browse a brand's website or app. The web and app is captured in the brand's on-site or in-app analytics solution. So if I go to autoproducts.com, I'm browsing around, I'm leaving my intent data on that site, and it's captured by systems that they already have in place. So Jeremy, help set the stage for us. So Google's working on the new GA Enterprise. It'll store web and app data. Will it be affected by third-party cookie deprecation and IDFA?
Yeah, well, it certainly will. That's a major driver of how track, and understand what consumers are doing on different sites via a product like GA. The commitment we have that we've been very public about is we will migrate the use cases that are within GA to this new world over time, and we're figuring that out. I'm not a product person. I don't know exactly how that will work. But the commitment is to be able to migrate all the major use cases for GA into a world where cookies are not available. Which includes, the ability to use some of that data around consumer usage, that first-party data, again, that you have as an advertiser to be able to, use it within the ads products we have. That said, like, I can't go beyond that because honestly, it's in development. That's part of the journey that we even have to go through. And it was a pause moment. I know that our product people and leaders are very nervous about this because it does require a bit of a leap of faith that we're going to make it happen. But I think that what I've heard is that we, the really thought leaders within the organization feel and see a path to that, and that we're committed to making it there, and we'll work with our partners like Dell to be able to walk through that as it emerges. But that's a commitment we have. Is, again, as I said earlier, to support the advertising use cases out there today with our platforms and this new environment. We will find a way, and we see a way to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. Then I guess, can you speculate on how the impact of third-party and IDFA removal will impact Adobe Analytics. And as full disclosure for the group, Delve is a GMP partner and reseller for GA360 and the new GA Enterprise, but we are also well aware that Adobe Analytics is a really large competitor for GA360.
Yeah, I honestly, it's funny. I haven't had a chance to talk with my Adobe counterparts. I know some people in that business. We're all a fairly small industry in some respects about their approach. My honest feeling is there's a big, very well established business. They have a lot invested. They're going to have probably a very similar approach that we do. They'll figure this out as well. It's too important to one of their core use cases. I mean, I think certainly Google Analytics, like we really do rely on the marketing analytics use cases out of this. The marketing use cases versus the analytics, I think they may be more centered on that, but have a lot of marketing use cases. But they're going to find a way to make this work, like just as we will. As an industry, we all need to do that, to be able to transition to a new world without cookies, and still be able to support the advertisers' needs around the use of the tool. So I don't personally have a lot of insight in that. I'm not a product lead within Google, so I don't know the competitive intel, and I don't know people over there that are telling me anything. But I just having known a lot of the people over there, I know they're going to be working on the same problems and have similarly highly capable people who will figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fair. Thanks, Jeremy. So let's talk about brands' first-party data. And for now, still in the context of data that consumers leave at the beginning of their journeys, i.e. brand's app, website, first-party data. So Bill, let me turn it to you. So what's your perspective on the role of web and app analytics tools such as GA or Adobe, and how can they improve advertising performance, particularly understanding the context of collecting first-party data?
Yeah, for us, it's foundational at the end of the day, right? So user comes to our site, we need to know the consumer journey when they go to an information page, when they look at a product grid, when they're interested in the product, what color they choose and whatnot. All that's foundational for us because then we're going to bucket them into differing audiences across the board. And then we're going to feed it into our ad platforms at the end of the day. So first and foremost, foundational in building and understanding the consumer journey and consumer audiences. But more so on how do we measure success from a media side using GA. Our e-com team won't like this, but I would argue that we're probably in GA more than they are. And what we're looking at is essentially, are we sending qualified audiences to the website? How long are they spending on the site? How many pages do they go through? What was our call to action effective? Was that landing page working or not? Do we need to switch it? So all of that is super important for us, and we'll alter our media plans and our creative based on how consumers are coming to the site and what they're doing there. Right. So ultimately, all we want to do is shorten that consumer journey. Click on an ad, get to the site, purchase, repeat. So GA and analytics, web analytics are super important for us as a media team.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Betsy, what's your perspective? So I know you're leading a team of 25 plus media traders, managing a ton of media for Delve's clients across search, social, display. Can you talk a little bit about how web analytics is used to lift advertising performance on a day-to-day level?
Well, Bill actually just outlined a bunch of the best practices that I was going to talk about, so that's covered. I would just add a couple of things. Like our traders are in there and really look to understand the conversion funnel metrics. So at every step within there, where is the drop off, and how does that vary by media source or traffic source? Landing page testing is another big piece of it as well. If someone's getting to a page and bouncing, maybe that's not the right page that's meeting their needs. So that's something we take into consideration. Segmentation, as Bill mentioned, and then also audience suppression. And so, in that example of somebody coming to the site, bouncing after 5 seconds, maybe I don't want to serve them 10 more ads. Maybe I want to suppress that audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. That's really helpful. So as we take this a step deeper, first-party data isn't only data stored on apps or web analytics solutions. It also can be data stored in the lower half of the consumer journey, such as customer purchase data that brands can store in their data lake or CRM system. So for example, at Delve, we see a lot of brands using a combination of their app, web, and customer purchase data for some really key use cases, such as predictive lifetime value. So to focus media on acquiring customers who are likely to buy again and again, really leaning into that loyalty perspective, and then next best action and personalization. So using past behavior to inform what products we could serve someone next, or what products we should recommend them based on what we know about them as a consumer. So Bill, leaning into the personalization perspective, how is Otter Products using first-party data today to deliver a really good user experience and really focusing on both the predictive lifetime value as well as that next best product?
Yeah, I would honestly say we're in the learning phase of getting good at this. We're definitely there's a curve to it. Really, for us, we utilize the Google platforms and Facebook platforms, and we're pretty reliant on those algorithms to deliver those personalization to it. But we are using first-party data and pushing it in to various platforms around this segmentation, just like we were talking about, right? So iPhone user, recent purchaser, who should we cross-sell, upsell in 60 days for screen protection, or accessory of some sort of product like that. So for us, we're trying to consolidate like I said, all of our consumer data into one spot, utilize that and push that out for us. So personalization goes beyond just ads for us. Obviously, we want to replicate that on the site. As a person enters the site, give them exactly what they're looking for. If they're an iPhone user, only show them iPhone products. If they're Samsung user, show them Samsung products, etc., and then try to cross-sell, upsell from there. So super important for us, and like I said, we're really trying to learn as we go. We do know it's all about shortening that consumer journey at the end of the day, like I mentioned previously.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I guess tying it back to our conversation on RoAS at the beginning, do you think that a better user experience, talking about personalization, leads to a higher advertising RoAS?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, going back to the conversations we've had with our finance teams and being good stewards of our dollar, shortening that journey, the less money that we spend acquiring a consumer is profit for the company at the end of the day, right? So the better the user experience, the more likely they are to recommend, the more likely they're to come back. We create this loyalty, we create the flywheel, and everybody's happy at the end of the day.
Yeah. Just to jump in, Google's seen the same thing across our businesses, that small tweaks in mobile experience in particular can result in vastly better conversion rates and better RoAS on the advertising, which obviously we care a lot about. But for the advertisers, like a focus on a better mobile experience is an easy lever, not easy, but an obvious lever to be able to pull. And also related to that is better commerce capabilities, better shopping cart experiences, better recommendation engines. All not easy to do, but all things that I think we all seen as consumers and other places that do it well. Notably Amazon. So I think there's a lot of tweaks and improvements we can make to first-party experiences that just improve the RoAS throughout. And what's interesting is the way I talk about it is there's a spine of deterministic data in there, right? You can, even with the cookies going away, some amount of those users, you're going to be able to understand that you served them an ad, they went to your site, they bought something, they bought something again. You have a sense of like return of investment that's kind of hardcore, and you can use that to model out of. You can say, well, this is the environment I advertised in, these are what I advertised them with, this is the tactics I use, that then you can extrapolate, say, as in general, will generate this amount of business for me on my website. And then you can start to understand through that journey how to optimize it, how to optimize the targeting and the advertising itself, the creative, how the optimizing the site experience, the shopping cart experience can improve that. And those are the tools that we want to empower the advertisers to be able to like really understand and be able to go activate.
Just to fill in that really quick, like it's changing the culture, at least within Otter, for teams working together, right? So how can the e-commerce team help out media team? How the media team help out the e-commerce team? And all of this data and all of these tools that Google has is allowing us to do that. So we're really all rowing in the same direction, where previously we might have been in a few different silos and kind of having our own agenda. So all of this is to make the company more efficient as well.
Yeah, one of the interesting byproducts of this is that I think there might have been a false specificity of cookie data and IDFA mobile identity. that, you know, in a digital advertising world, we're like, we're going to tie it all together and have a lot of data to understand the full purchase path and the multi-touch attribution models and such. But that left out a lot of advertising methods that are highly effective that we don't have that level of digital identity to be able to track. And so as a marketer, you'd have to like make evaluations different media mixes. So the MMMs still have a lot of value because of that, right? I do think there's a moment where we can maybe step back from that false specificity and use modeling to understand programmatic, you know, like digital advertising, but also to understand those same models can evaluate the, you know, direct mail or radio or television advertising potentially. You know, for me, it's exciting because I think it might make our ability to understand the full journey of a consumer better if we embrace like more of a probabilistic, you know, model-based approach. And I think that's better for the marketer at the end of the day, and honestly for consumer experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess, Betsy, on your end, how has your team been using PLTV insights from Delve's data science team in media management? How can we really tie that back to the actual performance?
Sure, so I can give an example. We've worked with Stride Gaming out of the UK, a big online gambling gaming client there. And we worked with them on the creation of a machine learning algorithm that would allow for bidding to a predicted future value of a consumer. And so this really, the end goal here was to shift the marketing spend toward the acquisition of those high value users. And we see this as applicable across many different industries. You know, not all users are created equal. So how do we make sure we're going after those high value ones and not just the ones that maybe convert once at a low amount? So what was unique here is that we included the offline conversion data as well, and as a result, it was able to actually predict user LTV with 88% accuracy. And so the marketing team was able to take this and reallocate budget, make sure that we're targeting the users that had the highest potential to be high value. And you know, that's kind of an ideal state, and we're seeing a lot of interest from our clients right now on getting to that ideal state. We have a lot of data lake projects in the works across numerous clients right now in partnership with Google, and it's, you know, another example is that it's highly applicable to our nonprofit clients. So you know, you might get that initial single donation from someone, but then how do we convert them into a monthly donor and keep them engaged over a longer period of time? And PLTV plays a big role in that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really great to hear that clients are, you know, taking an interest and taking the steps forward right now to set themselves up for success with these different tools such as data lakes, CDPs, to ensure that we're empowered to use first-party data when first-party data is really going to become king. Awesome. So one last topic. I know we want to make sure that we leave time for some questions here. But BCG recently stated, and I'm paraphrasing a bit here, that brands that embrace their own first-party data can increase advertising RoAS up to 60%, which is a super high number. And more interestingly, only 2% of brands are really using their own first-party data to create a seamless cross-app web store and call center and personalized experience. So, Bill, with that, what is your POV on the above statement? I know we've talked about this a little bit already, but does Autoproduct see a bigger opportunity today in using first-party data to improve RoAS and deliver a really personalized experience, or are both really equally important for your business right now?
Yeah, so both are equally important for our business, but if I have to choose one, I'm going after RoAS. I think it's our bigger opportunity. I kind of alluded to it before, right? So budgets shift and change and move around. If we can be more efficient with our dollars across the entire funnel, the more trust is created, the bigger the budgets we get, the happier the company is at the end of the day. So it stretches our dollar a lot further, and so that's why I want to focus on that. And then once we prove out that impact, that conversation gets a lot easier with everybody throughout the company, the C-suite, et cetera. Personalization is extremely important to us also. So I put that secondary though. We want personalization. We want that consumer experience to be seamless, just as you mentioned across the board. So we want to deliver the right message to the right person at the right time. Where are you at in your own personal journey? Are you in discovery phase? Are you doing research? Are you about to purchase and just looking for the lowest price you can possibly get? So the better that we can get at messaging that person in that moment will drive that efficiency, which will drive that RoAS, which will keep that flywheel going. So from a business perspective, I like to focus on RoAS, but you can't have a better RoAS without that personalization piece. at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. So I guess, Jeremy, Betsy, I'll turn it over to you guys. So Jeremy, any closing thoughts on this topic or really anything that we've discussed today?
No, thank you again for the opportunity to speak. I don't want to oversimplify, but I do think this is a journey we're all taking together. Right now, we are in a world that, cookies have not disappeared. Identifiers are out there. So you have to, you want to continue to use the tools you have available to you. But I think it's important that you start to invest in durable tactics and experiments in the new world that make sense for your business as a brand, like where you have levers that you can pull and you can start getting down this road. I think I've tried to talk not just about the negative use cases, but some of the positive use cases, particularly around first-party data and consumer journeys. Like there's just a lot of interesting things we can do as an industry to improve that and tie that together and stitch it together better. But again, this is a journey we're all on together. Google is here to provide, advertising platforms and advertising itself to kind of help marketers achieve their goals. Our mission is to make sure that we provide a future and a way to that path, but that doesn't happen without a delve. It doesn't happen without an otter. It doesn't happen without all the constituents of the ecosystem. So it's a process we'll have to go through and we'll have to invest in over time. And so what we're looking for is engagement and experimentation and adoption of some of these tactics that make sense for your business as we make this transition from today to the tomorrow. So that's sort of my big message, and excited to do it because it's an exciting time. I started in this industry right as RTB emerged and programmatic media became something we could do, and it reminds me a lot of that in the sense like there's a lot of change, and that means that those that are paying attention and adopting trends and getting ahead of this are gonna do better in this new world. So I encourage everybody to take a hard look at it and think about what are the benefits to your business and also the negatives. Like let's be crystal clear about that. And talk to your partners, talk to other people and start to invest right now.
Yeah, absolutely. As always, change presents opportunity, and to your point, Jeremy, it's about who is ready to take that opportunity, and those are the people and the brands that are really going to come out on top.
Yeah,
Betsy,
absolutely.
Any closing thoughts on your end?
Yeah, just piggybacking off the change. I mean, I think that's what keeps this industry interesting, right? Like I am never ever bored at work, and there's always something new to learn or to test. And I think to Jeremy's point, the time is now to start with that testing. Big or small, just start prepping for the changes now. They are coming, and we're happy to help with any of that.
Awesome, thanks, Betsy. So in closing, the new GA free and GA 360, the paid version, will be available for whitelisting beta as soon as this summer. And really our recommendation, and of course as a GMP reseller, would be to get ahead of your first party web app data, and we definitely consider upgrading to GA 360 now if you're not using GA 360 or you're not using the paid version of GA 360. So, well, that's really all the questions that I had for you guys today. Jeremy, Betsy, Bill, it was certainly a pleasure hosting you guys, and really appreciate the thoughtful and strategic answers. We did want to leave about 10 minutes here for questions. So I don't see a ton of questions right now. We do have one question here, and Jeremy, I'll direct this to you. So let's talk a little bit about the time frame for this change. So I know 2022 is kind of what's on the radar. Is there any more information that you have to share?
Yeah, I mean, this is where we are listening to others as much as you're listening to us. It's really, in some ways, it's Google Chrome's decision.
Yeah,
it is absolutely about how they handle cookies. What they've told and said in market, and they've been very transparent, is that they are going to migrate to a world without cookies, but they're going to do it when the advertising ecosystem is prepared to make that leap, so that we can support advertising use cases. That's what the sandbox is all about, that you hear a lot about, and developing things like Flock and Fledge, which is the audience targeting and the remarketing kind of option in the future. There's a measurement version coming soon that will be out there for testing and experimentation. So I think it's going to be a process. In terms of absolute timelines, we're guessing, and it's honestly a guess, 2022, sometime within that year. I can't speculate any further more than that because I don't know. But I think what we as an ads business wanted to do is to tell people that we saw this coming. We're reading the tea leaves this way. We want to respect consumer consent, so we want to start setting, start our own evolution of our platform toward more probabilistic, a future, predictive future, and start to experiment and look at opportunities right now, even with cookies and identifiers being around, that we can start to use some of these tools to accomplish the same goals. So that's a lot of when you see, you know, our blog posts around experimenting and Fledge and such. We're just running our own test with a Fledge-based audience versus a traditional-based audience, and seeing, you know, how close is it in terms of performance, and then tweaking. And then what we're going to challenge all of you to do is to do the same thing for your own business. You know, to use our platforms over time as we release these features to try it. So, you know, I think this year is a good one to start, you know, finding moments to test, to look at more probabilistic modeling approaches for understanding how the advertising is going, to build better first-party data connections with consumers, to be able to like start a path down that road. There's a lot of good foundational work. That's what we're encouraging people to do. And then next year is going to be a big year for transition out of this cookie-based infrastructure.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. So there aren't any other questions listed right now, but I want to give everyone an opportunity, if you do have questions. Along the right side panel of the webinar, there's a little section called questions. You can type them in there, and then we'll be happy to answer any. So let's give everyone just a couple moments here to see if there are any additional questions. And if not, then we'll close this out. Perfect. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions come in, so it looks like we were crystal clear in everything that we shared today. So that's huge kudos to Jeremy, Bill, and Betsy. Oh, we did one come in. All right. So can we elaborate on the use of GA360 versus GA free in this transition? Jeremy, I'll direct that one to you as well.
You know, it's funny. We focus very much, my sales team, on the paid product. You know, it's a license sale versus a free product. Our investment is very much in GA360 and the new version that we're calling GA4 that we'll be launching, that incorporates a lot of like app functionality in particular out of Firebase. And we'll have obviously incorporate a lot of these kind of future-proof, privacy-safe aspects also as the cookies deprecate. I'm actually going to turn it back to Betsy, because I think you guys are more in the trenches on how the feature differentiation between GA free, if you will, and GA paid. I'm just not an expert. I focus almost entirely on the GA paid product and the value proposition and market.
Sure.
And so I don't want to dodge the question, but I feel like there are people here on this call that might know this better than I do.
So as a media person, I remember the first time I saw GA360, like having worked in GA free pretty extensively, and I saw GA360, I was like, holy crap, I have all my CM data in here. Like the efficiencies it creates in terms of consolidating performance data, media data, et cetera, like within one view and within one platform. You know, honestly, that's the biggest benefit that I see in terms of doing your best to establish more of a single source of truth. Of course, there's always limits where Facebook won't allow us to pull in impression data or view through data, et cetera. But from what I've seen, just the benefits to media buyers or analytics teams in terms of being able to access a lot more data in one place make it really valuable.
And I think even more so as we move into this world where third-party cookies are not existent, as we talked earlier about collecting that web and app data, having the best tool and best resource to allow you to do that and use that data is going to become even more important for brands.
Yeah, I think, you know, if brands are sort of on the fence or considering it, there's certainly an early adopter advantage now. You get more unsampled data to work with, and it's faster and more efficient for media and marketing teams overall.
Absolutely. So another question just came in. So how do we suggest what would be the best path to register, get the beta version for this change? So I think that's a question specific to Google Analytics, Jeremy.
Could you repeat the question? I'm not sure if I understood it.
Absolutely. So just asking, what would be the best path to register / get the beta version for this change? So I think the answer would be to adopt a GA or GA360, but would love to give you an opportunity to elaborate.
Being on the paid product will obviously get you better access. You know, we'll filter down into free appropriately, but we're focusing a lot of the more advanced features post cookie deprecation in our licensed products. first and foremost. So obviously that's important. I think in terms of access to features within that, like, so the sandbox capabilities of Fledge and Flock and other things like that, that's still being determined. Like, we're still developing that technology and deploying it. We will push that out through our partners, primarily, honestly. So working with the Delve is important. It allows you to, be able to, they will have preferential access versus like that Joe average, consumer, because we have, somebody that we can work with to, get feedback on betas and product launches. So, and somebody that's honestly an expert within the space. So, relying heavily. So I think, those that are here are in the right place. Using the paid product, working with the partner with Delve are probably the best things you can do right now. And we'll bring that to market as quickly as we can, as it's available and as we can scale it.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to double down on your comment about partners, I think that is a really important element here. At Delve, and as Betsy mentioned, we're really pushing our partners and our clients, rather, now to get ahead and understand what the opportunities are for them, how can they prepare themselves, and that may be a little bit more than what the average client could do. Perfect. One other question here as we come up to our last couple minutes. So if cookies go away, how does this impact conversion in AdWords? Do we expect conversions to degrade? So I'll throw that to the group. Betsy, Jeremy, you guys may be the best ones.
That's something we care deeply about. And I mentioned earlier, like, that there was a tremendous amount of modeling in our conversion already because of the lack of data that we're seeing already disappear from the ecosystem. We're just ramping that up further. I will say very confidently that Google has engineers to understand, like, modeling, ML, and other capabilities to understand from a small piece of data about how to extrapolate to how that works and to be able to do conversion modeling appropriately. One of the most basic things you can do is be on GA. Like having GA, having our Google tags on your site will allow for much better conversion modeling within a Google Ads infrastructure. Like, it is a foundational thing we're focusing on, is using GA, or there are other Google tag solutions, but I think we particularly believe in GA to be able to, like, get good resolution on the value of Google Ads spent. It's just it's a simple thing to do, and it provides tremendous benefit when you're doing search or YouTube. So it's a simple thing, but it opens up a lot of doors, and there's a huge commitment within the company to really improve our conversion capabilities and modeling.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. Well, thank you guys so much. We're coming right up on time here.